So here's the video that nobody makes. And I know this because I literally did the research. I looked and looked all across YouTube and could not find any videos on this. But so nobody talks about what happens after you actually purchase the commercial real estate. They talk about how to find it, how to analyze it, how to close it, and then it's crickets. It's like that's the end, and it's really just the beginning. So you are in luck because today we're going to be going through the entire first 12 months of what actually happens after you purchase your property. We'll start off with the first 30 days because that's the most labor intensive. We'll get through all those things and then we'll move on to the rest of the months. And that time period, that whole 12 months after you purchase, is literally equally as important as the steps that you took leading up to purchasing the property. So we're not going to leave any stones unturned here. And what I find a lot of times is that people think that the process is a lot scarier than it actually is, and a lot more exciting too, because some of this can be very mundane, but you'll come to know after watching this video that mundane is exactly what we want. My goal here is to make sure that you have an idea of what you are actually getting yourself into when it comes to running a business and now owning this commercial real estate property. So I'm not one of those advisors that just kind of leaves you hanging. I'm going to give you the nitty gritty on what this process looks like and what to expect. So stay tuned. So let's start off with the actual closing day, right? Ground zero. You've done all the work. You've gotten to the day that you're going to purchase the property. And so here we are. And if I could describe that in one word, it would be anticlimactic. And I'll probably use that term a lot throughout this video, and you'll see why by the time we get to the end. So you're at closing day, and it's very much one of those, the expectations versus reality, the Instagram versus reality type of concept here. So if you are local to the place where you're purchasing the property, you'll go to the title company, you'll send the wire transfer, you'll sign a bunch of documents, maybe take a photo, and then you go home. And if you are maybe out of state, and so you might meet with the notary, you have probably already sent the wire to them, and so you're just gonna sign some documents, and then you go home. So still very anticlimactic, and that's pretty much it. Congratulations, you own the property now. So once you get through closing day, you're finally at your ground zero, step zero of, okay, what do I do next in this next 30 days? Because that can be really critical. And what you're gonna do is a lot of admin type of tasks. So you're gonna make sure your insurance is in order. You're gonna make sure that the utilities have been transferred, any that are in your name as the owner. You're gonna make sure you get a business bank account for the property. And you're also going to reach out to your tenants. You'll say, hey, I'm the new owner. Nice to meet you. This is where you pay rent now. Very important. So once you're fully organized, you got all your systems in place, that last week or two in the first 30 days, a lot of times people will ask, like, is that it? Like, is there something else that I need to be doing? And the answer is usually no. You've already taken the steps, and here we are now waiting for the next cycle of things. And we cannot gloss over the fact that that is a win. The fact that all you had to do was some administrative tasks in the first 30 days, and now this investment that you've made, that you did all this planning and build up to get to, is now working and running the way that you designed it to. That is a win. And that's not to say that problems and unexpected things won't happen, but the process and the steps are very simple, very basic. So now rolling into months 2 and month 3, that's usually when you see those first rent payments start to come through. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. Maybe you have some tenants who pay via like paper checks, or they mail it to you or bring it to an office or something like that. And so what do? You take it to the bank, or maybe you do a mobile deposit and then you go on about your day, right? Or maybe you have an online payment option and some kind of a system or software that your tenants use. And so you'll get a notification, an email, you'll check it, and then you'll go on about your day. So once again, still very anticlimactic here. And that is the win, that you want this to be as anticlimactic as possible. So at this point, you'll have some monthly reporting that you can do as well, because you've been there for about a month or so. Rent has started to come in, but it's usually pretty simple. So you want to make sure you have your NOI numbers together, any vacancies that might be coming up, or any maintenance items that you need to be checking on. And you also want to make sure of any leases that might be coming up as ending in the next 6 to 12 months. And that's about probably a page worth of a summary of things that you should be looking at. Another thing to expect during this time period is going to be some communication from the tenants, right? And so make sure you keep in mind that a residential and a commercial landlord, while they are fundamentally the same, they can be very different in action. These are business owners who are your tenants, who are operating a business out of your space. So you want to make sure you keep it very professional, very direct, and you also want to make sure that you are very well aware of what the lease terms are, who's responsible for what, because that will come in handy for sure. So knowing what the lease terms are and who's responsible for what is especially important if some of those leases are going to be what's called triple net leases. And a lot of times in those cases, the tenants are responsible for a lot of their own maintenance. So things like the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, those are a lot of times covered by the tenant. And so you need to make sure that you are aware of what is and is not covered or that you're responsible for. A lot of questions that people typically have during this time period are things around the lease clauses, around loan statements or payments. Where do I make my payments? How much is my payment? Things like that. And usually just something that they forgot to ask before we got to the closing. But most of the time it is pretty simple and very manageable. By the end of that 90 days, you want to make sure that you have your team in place. That is very critical. If you're using a property manager, you want to have that already set up by now. You also need a CPA who specializes in commercial real estate, not just residential real estate, because there are some tax benefits, and especially around depreciation, that you want to make sure that your CPA knows and understands. Also the same with the real estate attorney, and then also some type of maintenance person, because again, things will come up. But you don't necessarily have to be talking to these people on a regular basis. However, when the time comes and you need them, you want to be able to have somebody to go to. So months 4 through 6 is where you're getting into a little bit of a groove, right? And you're really going to find out whether or not the investment that you made is working out the way that you intended it to. So by now, you'll have some data on income that has come in. You'll also have some data on expenses, and that's going to be some very critical information. And you really are able to put your due diligence to the test here. Is it really performing the way that I intended? And whether it's in your lease or not, I recommend that you start to have quarterly check-ins with your tenants. Your tenants are your backbone to your business. And so a simple, hey, how are things going? Anything come up recently? Just opening up that line of communication with them can get you some valuable information. Things like, oh, am I going to have a vacancy coming up? Are they thinking about moving? And little things like that can really help to affect what your long-term looks like here. So we're 6 months in now. It is likely that some type of an issue will have come about by now, right? So maybe your tenant has a build out that needs a modification, or your insurance company asks for a question, or there's some kind of an issue with the roof. And a lot of those things feel like big in the moment, but most of the time they're a lot more routine than it actually seems. But that's also why having some type of a team is going to be so important. So having that real estate attorney, having that property manager can make those big issues feel a lot smaller, because you have a team supporting you and helping you, and it's not everybody's first time. They're experienced, so you can find comfort in that moving forward. So we're also going to want to do a 6-month cash flow check-in. We're going to check on, make sure the rent is coming in the way that we intended, make sure that the occupancy is where we predicted that it would be, and then also making sure that you are netting enough to cover your mortgage, right, and cover your debts for the property. And so you're also going to want to have a review with your CPA at this point. We talked about before depreciation, and that starts at the date that you own the property. So now that you are 6 months in, it's a good idea to kind of look at where that is and make sure that you're headed in the direction that you would want to, and do some tax planning with your CPA. Now let's talk about months 7 through 12, where we are rounding out your entire first year of owning your commercial real estate property. And let's take for a second and imagine that, say for an entire 2 months, your only responsibility was to make sure that the rent payment hit, right? You didn't have any CPA meetings. You didn't have to talk to your attorney at all. No property management issues came up or property issues came up. And so imagine that happening. And I know that sounds too good to be true, but that's really just passive income living up to the hype. And as you buy more properties and start to scale, maybe you have less months where nothing needs your attention, right? But the beauty of CRE is that it is boring. If it is boring, then you are doing it correctly. You're also going to want to do an annual review. You'll look at all of your numbers, what you brought in, what you put out. I have an entire video on different numbers that you can run on the property. So make sure you go back and check that out. And once you make it to this point, you're almost to your entire first year of owning this property, you are likely going to realize that this was not as scary as you thought that it was going to be. And that the more boring it is, the better that is for you. The anticipation was way worse than what actually took place. So month 10 or 11, you're going to start to do some annual planning, right? You're going to want to look at what's coming up. Are there any leases that are going to expire? Are there any market shifts that you should be aware of? Are you still getting the best interest rate on your loan, or any other maybe opportunities for you to be able to purchase? Because now you've got the bug and you might be looking for a new property. You're also going to want to do an annual review on your numbers. So I have a video on different numbers that you should run and apply to your commercial properties. So make sure that you look at that video as well. And as you're doing your annual review, you will probably ask yourself, why did I wait so long, right? And you'll come to realize that the anticipation was way worse than the actual reality of what took place over the course of this year. You'll also have an appreciation for the boring, right? And how that is really the key here. So now that you have an idea of what to expect in that first year of purchasing, and you're thinking, okay, it's time for me to pull the trigger. What are my next steps? It's time for you to book a one-on-one call with me where we will go over your goals. We'll go over the market. We'll go over some realistic numbers that apply specifically to you and decide if investing in Houston is the right move for you. So there's a link in the description to book that one-on-one call. My name is Lexi Sims. I'm a commercial real estate advisor here in Houston, Texas. I'll see you guys in the next video.